The time of the year where there's an abundance of summer squash is finally here, and to celebrate, I wanted to do something a little bit different than grilling or sauteing. So to help bring the summer squash to life, I sliced them nice and thin, and then I sprinkled them with a lot of salt to draw out all of that moisture. And as my summer squash was getting nice and parched, I got started on making my galette dough, which had a cup and a half of all-purpose flour, a generous sprinkle of salt, and then of course a stick of unsalted cold hard butter. Once all of my butter was cut in and every piece of flour had been touched by butter, I took about 2 tablespoons of ice cold water and I slowly streamed that in, and then I very briefly formed a little round of dough, and then I packed that up nice and tight in some plastic wrap and I stuck it in the freezer. In the meantime, I created a little Dijon mustard spread, which I added a clove of grated garlic to, as well as a little bit of pepper. And then I took about 1 teaspoon of honey and I added that in as well to sweeten it up. And once that was thoroughly mixed, I started to dry off all of that summer squash. After all the flour in my dough looked mostly hydrated, which took about 30 minutes in the freezer, I rolled it out until it was pretty thin. And then after I transferred it to my parchment-lined baking sheet, I took my Dijon mustard mix and I spread it out nice and thin onto that galette dough. And then of course I grated a generous amount of Parmigiano Reggiano. And in case you didn't know, cheese actually acts as a really good protective layer before adding any sort of vegetable on a delicate pastry like a galette. It's sort of like an insurance to make sure your galette doesn't get soggy. Anyway, after I added all my zucchini, I folded up my galette and then I topped it with some pepper and flaky salt. And then I brushed the edges with an egg wash and topped it with Parmigiano Reggiano. And then I baked it at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 minutes. And voila! I mean, not only was it so stunning, but it was absolutely delicious.